please. There we go. So, in talking about what goes on behind the scenes with Wireshark, Wireshark is an open source project, and it's kind of like at your local water department in that you want as little going on behind the scenes as possible. You want everything to happen out in the opens for everyone to see. But what actually happens is all these things go on, and we do all the work that we need to do to get either produce water or produce software, and everything happens in the open, but nobody really looks at it because, frankly, it's boring. This is, for example, on the left, a report from my local water department, and I'm not excited about it at all except for the item in bold that says hexavalent chromium. I'm really excited about hexavalent chromium now because it's in bold. I wonder why. On the right, we have a printout of Wireshark's bug tracker. And I put these up because, like I said, all this stuff happens in the open, but it's effectively behind the scenes because it's kind of dry and technical and nobody really cares about it. I'm probably one of maybe 4 people that loaded this page from my water department, and I don't think many people read the Wireshark bug tracker for entertainment purposes either. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about today actually happens in the open, but you may not know about it. So by definition, it ends up being behind the scenes. So let's talk about Wireshark. This is an overview of what Wireshark does. It takes packets from the network and lets you apply BPI filters to those packets and builds a protocol tree, and then we can, on top of that, add a few features, and hopefully at the very end we have a happy user, somebody who got their job done and was able to solve a problem or do whatever work they needed to do. I tend to not worry about the process from here back because either there are already talented people working on it, like the libpcap team. They handle packet capture very well. The npcap team is kind of taking over for WinPcap on the Windows side, but those people are doing a great job at what they do, so I really don't have to worry about it. And there are other aspects of that, like if your switch isn't spanning packets correctly, there's not a lot I can do about that, so I just tend to not worry about it. I do worry about from here forward. I worry about how we dissect packets and all the features in Wireshark, and I worry about how well people can do their jobs and how quickly they can do their jobs with Wireshark, and that's kind of what I'm going to cover today in this talk. So to get to that happy face at the very end on the very right, there are 5 different criteria we need to satisfy that we need to get working. And the first 3 are kind of development-centered, which is why we have a bunch of developers on the stage. And the last 2 kind of deal with users directly. But they actually have something in common. What do you think it might be? What they have in common are yaks. There's this wonderful term in the computer biz called yak shaving. And if you've ever gone to make an omelet and noticed that you're out of eggs, so you get in your car and notice you're out of petrol, so you go to the petrol station and you're pumping gas to make an omelet, that is the process of yak shaving. And it's something we do quite a bit in order to produce software, and it's it takes up a lot of time for what I do day to day, and some of these guys as well. And like I said, it's a wonderful term. I mentioned it to I have a friend who's an attorney, and he's trying to get this term introduced into US case law. So we'll see how well he does. So let's talk about a few of our yaks. The first items, the first 2 are prerequisites and configuration. If you want to build Wireshark, you have to install a bunch of third-party libraries and applications and a compiler and other things and other build tools. And getting that all in place is easy on some platforms, which we were kind of talking about last night, and quite difficult on others. I remember many months ago, somebody sent in an email to, I think, the Wireshark dev list, Paul Offord, who I thought he was going to be here, but he couldn't make it, I guess. But he said he was having trouble building Wireshark on Windows. And this is a message we see coming in on the list occasionally. And I saw that message, and I just kind of went like this, and because I knew all the painful steps he was going to have to go through just to get Wireshark compiled on his system. And so that kind of inspired me to send out this tweet. And it's true, if you're building Wireshark on Linux, there are 3 commands you run: configure, make, install, or there's a CMake equivalent, but it's 3 commands. On Windows, it's a lot like building a motorcycle engine. There are so many different parts and so many different steps, and you have to do them correctly in an order or else everything blows up. And it's just a big pain. And I think this is a significant problem because we do have a lot of Windows users. About 90% of the downloads for all the installers on the Wireshark website are for Windows. That's kind of skewed towards Windows because we have automatic updates for that platform. But that also translates to having a lot of Windows developers. And if you're doing development on Wireshark, I want you fixing bugs and adding features. I don't want you fooling around with your build system like CMake and installing packages and all these systems, all these other things. So this is actually a big problem, and it's a big problem for open source software in general. There just seems to be this great divide where you have things that are easy on the Linux and Mac OS side and that are very, very difficult on the Windows side. So as an example, when I talk about prerequisites, on Linux, you just install whatever prerequisites you need through your packaging system. Linux distributions are very good at producing packages, and they have a lot of mature packaging systems these days. And getting all that installed is very, very easy. That's not the case on Windows. Windows traditionally hasn't had a packaging system. There are 2 packaging systems that have come out recently called Nougat and Chocolatey, and they're kind of complementary, and they actually work really well. The problem is that the open source world does not seem to know that they exist. There are projects that build packages for Windows, free and open source software packages for Windows, but they don't use Nougat. If you build on a Fedora or an OpenSUSE system, you get RPM packages, which is not useful at all on Windows. And you get all these EXEs. Windows really wants you to sign your EXEs, and none of them are signed. And it's kind of a mess. Like I said, there are all these different projects that produce these packages, like OpenSUSE and Fedora and Debian, and a project called WinBuilds. I think the first one of those that actually uses Nougat packages will suddenly become quite popular. But we'll see where that goes. Anything you guys want to add? Sure.
Just to say, I think something Gerald didn't put on the slides there, we do have quite a comprehensive developer's guide, instructions for setting up your build environment. And if you do follow that exactly step by step, then you will produce a working build environment on Windows.
Yeah.
But if you deviate at any point, then it will blow up.
Yeah. And not to keep harping on this, but this is true. I mean, this is I think, at the core of a lot of this. You have a lot of open source projects that focus on Linux, which is fine if that's the platform people tend to use. But they advertise themselves as being cross-platform. What that really means is Linux is tier 1, Mac OS is maybe tier 1.5, and Windows is tier infinity. And if they produce binaries for Windows, they're not well tested, they're not signed, they're not well supported, and like I said, I think this is a huge problem because this really limits the exposure to a lot of these projects that they could have on a popular platform, which is Windows. At the same time, and I don't mean to keep complaining about them. I understand that people have limited resources, they have a limited amount of time that they can spend on this, but I think even a little bit of extra work that they could do on behalf of supporting Windows would really help. So the next step in getting towards that happy user is compilation, which is taking all the source code and turning it into actual executable files. And Wireshark, as a project, for our packages that we build, we use 3 compilers. We use Visual C++, we use GCC, which is the GNU compiler collection, and we use Clang, which is the LLVM compiler. And this is actually a really good thing because having to support all these compilers forces us to make cleaner code, because all these compilers are picky about different things as far as writing good code. And it's a little bit of extra effort for us, but it's actually beneficial for the project in the long term because we write better code. But there is a problem here and the problem is not on the FA side. This problem is on the Windows side. There's something called the C standard library. If you're writing an application in C or C++, you have your application up here. Below that, usually you have something called the C standard library. And it's been around for a long time, about as long as the movie Highlander, which I reference up there. And it sits between your program and the operating system, and it provides a layer of portability so that you can, no matter what platform you're on, you can, in the very exact same way, open files and format strings and do all sorts of other useful things. The problem here is that ideally you have one libc. I have one libc on my Android phone. I have one libc on my macOS laptop. I have one libc on each of my Linux servers. I don't know what iOS has, but I would imagine they have between 0 and 1 libcs on your iPhone. The problem here is that on Windows, it's a different story. I looked on my Windows VM, and I have all these libcs plus one extra. If you go to Programs and Features, you'll probably see something like this. You'll see a bunch of Microsoft Visual C++ redistributables. For some really weird, strange, odd reason, Microsoft decided that their C standard library should be tied directly to the version of Visual Studio that you're using. And so as they release new versions of Visual Studio, you get an extra version of the C library. That's a problem for us because we build Wireshark with Visual Studio. And a bunch of our third-party libraries build their software using GCC. GCC can't use any of these redistributables. They have to use something called MSVCRT, which is a really old and crusty and awful C library that's guaranteed to be on every version of Windows. I don't know why Microsoft, or how they ended up in that situation, but it's something we had to deal with. And as it turns out, when we ship Wireshark, we actually use 2 C runtimes. We use the old crusty one, and we use the one that's linked with Visual Studio 2013. This is difficult for us because we have to be very careful about how we allocate and deallocate memory, open and close files, and all sorts of other things. It's a big pain. It's another yak that we had to shave, but that's what we do. And on to packaging. So we're further along in that diagram. We're kind of up to where the user is. And on to packaging. Ideally, when you download Wireshark, it should be easy to obtain and easy to install. And we got the easy to obtain thing worked out pretty well, I think. My employer, Riverbed, sponsors a bunch of download servers for Wireshark, and so we have 2 in the US and 1 in Europe and 1 in Singapore. But it should be very easy when you go down to the Wireshark website to click on the download link, and you should very quickly get a copy of Wireshark. And that's pretty much a solved problem. And like I said, it should be very easy. But the packaging, the actual installation part is a bit more difficult. What you should see when you go to install Wireshark on Windows is what you see here on the left. You should see, Windows should ask you if you want to install this. There should be a verified publisher, Wireshark Foundation, Inc. This is what happens when you try to install something that's been signed with a certificate, a code signing certificate. This ensures that when you go to install that file, you know who the publisher is, and you know that it hasn't been modified. It's bit for bit identical to what was downloaded from the server. What you see on the right is what happens when you try to install something that hasn't been signed. You get this kind of warning, and you don't know where this came from. This could have the computer equivalent of gout or scurvy or some other virus or disease. You just don't know what it has. So ideally what you want to have is this. And this is actually pretty easy and straightforward. Microsoft has a set of instructions on their site. If you go get a certificate, you can then follow these steps and sign your package, and everything will be happy. That part is deterministic. There's another part of this that's not deterministic, which is called Windows Smart Screen. Newer versions of Windows, even if you have signed everything and you have this digital certificate, they still don't trust your program. You have to be a known publisher and you have to use a known certificate. So this past January, when we got a new certificate because our old one expired, I had to go tell Microsoft, I had to go through something called the Windows Application Certification Kit to let Microsoft know that I changed out the cert. And yeah, that stands for WAC, Windows Application Certification Kit. But you know, it's just an extra step that we had to do just to make sure that you can install Wireshark more easily. Same is true on Mac OS. If you download something that's not signed, Mac OS is going to complain, and you have to go to this, you know, your security control panel and tell Mac OS that, okay, fine, I downloaded this thing, and go ahead and run it anyway. Ideally, you do not see this if you have a signed executable. But there are a lot of times when I go and download an application and it's not signed, and I see this. I have to wonder how many people go ahead and click on that Anywhere radio button and go ahead and run insecure software. I don't mind going through all the trouble of signing all this stuff just because it gives you a level of assurance that when you go to install and use Wireshark that you know where it came from and that it came from us. But like I said, this is just another yak we have to shave. So once you do get Wireshark downloaded and installed on your computer, you want it to work well. And one of the ways that we do that is through, some level of quality assurance. We don't have a dedicated staff of people who will go through and do manual checks of Wireshark. So what we end up having to do is throw machines at it. And so we have something called a continuous integration server, which is BuildBot. And BuildBot is a collection of machines. Every time somebody checks in a change in our source code repository, this collection of machines running Windows and Mac OS and Linux goes and builds Wireshark. And we run a bunch of tests. We compile it with very strict compiler options just to make sure that the code's okay. We build packages and things like that. This has a lot of advantages. One is that it gives developers really fast feedback, almost instantaneous feedback sometimes, as far as whether or not their code is going to compile on every platform and if it's going to pass all the tests. This is also beneficial for users because we can turn around packages very quickly. If somebody, say, reports a bug in a specific protocol they're using, we can go and fix that bug and let them know, that that's been fixed and that they can get a package in about 30 minutes to an hour. And if they just have a problem with that particular protocol, they can go in and get that new installer and have that bug fixed and be on, move on with their day, which is a really powerful thing with our build system, I think. One of the things we also do with BuildBot is try to break Wireshark. We do use something called fuzz testing, where we feed it corrupt packets just to try to make Wireshark crash, and sometimes we do, most of the time we don't. You guys have anything else you want to add? Yeah, and we also pass the code on to external services that will scan our code and look for problems. One of those is Coverity. They're a company that will do static analysis on our code. So, so far I've been complaining about all the grunt work that we have to do to produce Wireshark. This is something we do behind the scenes, and but I hate to complain for the whole presentation, though. So I'll move on to some of the things that I do like about this project that go behind the scenes. One of those things is the amount of generational knowledge that gets passed on. We have a mix of well, it's all guys, but but we do have a mix of ages of developers and experience. And one of the things I really love about this project is seeing, some of the developers who have been around a long time working with, some of the younger developers. In this industry, we have a really bad habit of throwing away everything every few years and starting from scratch. That's good in some ways, but it also means that we tend to repeat mistakes over time. And I think it's really useful having older and younger developers work together so that we can maybe ensure that some of those mistakes aren't repeated. And from my perspective, since I'm an older one, it's really handy for me to work with younger developers just because the state of the art of the industry moves forward. And there are a lot of things that, when I was in studying computer science in college, there are a lot of things that just weren't covered back then because those technologies didn't exist. And working with younger developers exposes me to newer ideas and newer ways of doing things. And I'm really grateful for that. I'm actually blowing through this really quickly, so sorry about that. One of the things that I try to do behind the scenes is it boils down to paying attention. And I try to do that here at SharkFest. I try to observe users and see how they use Wireshark and how they, where they might struggle with Wireshark and pick up clues as to where we might improve the application. I try to do that. I try to help out Laura in her classes as much as I can. Mostly that's, when she presents a webinar, I'll try to jump in and answer questions and help out with that. I try to help Hansong when he goes around and teaches classes and observe the students and see how they're doing. And but day to day, I try to, as much as I can, I try to keep up with our question and answer site, which is ask.wireshark.org, our the Wireshark users mailing list, the bug tracker, and all this stuff. So a lot of my day-to-day work is just trying to deal with the flow of emails that come into my inbox and try to keep tabs on where users are having trouble. If we release something with a bug that's affecting a lot of people, we'll try to get that fixed really quickly, for example. And there are a lot of things behind the scenes in Wireshark that I don't know about. For instance, a lot of companies have their own internal version of Wireshark, and I don't know what they're doing. I'm assuming they have internal dissectors for whatever protocols they handle inside their company. That's usually the case as far as I can tell. But there are a lot of people using Lua with Wireshark that don't seem to be interacting with the rest of the Wireshark community, and that's a big mystery to me. I'd kind of like to know what they're doing. But that's like I can't talk much about it just because I don't know about it. That's about all. Those are about all the slides that I have for development. Did you guys want to add anything as far as? Okay. I guess it's going to be a short presentation then. Sure.
While we don't know about internal Wireshark usage, we love to get patches. So if you don't want to maintain your own internal version of Wireshark dissector, please send us the patches and we will help you clean it up to get it accepted to the main repository. So you will get it with the next release and you can stop maintaining it yourself.
Okay.
It's not the case with Lua dissectors, which we don't accept, though. But you can add the link on the wiki page to your Lua dissectors if you want to share those.
Janice wanted to. Okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah, about the Lua detector, as Berlin mentioned, well, when you have Lua detector, you can put it on Wiki for as an example for others. But, well, yeah. So one difference between the Lua detector and C detector, for example, that Lua detectors tend to have quite good backward compatibility. There's documentation where you can also see like the version compatibility, but yeah, at times we also tend to make changes, and we don't have quite some feedback from you guys about how you use Lua. So if you have some problem with Lua, or it would be great also to get your feedback.
Did anybody else want to? Sure.
Yeah, just a quick comment about internal private versions of Wireshark. I've done it quite a lot in the past myself, but I've always tried to find the parts that could be public. There are always some parts that are either not to be shared or just of limited interest, but there's usually other parts that you can share. So it's worth the effort.
So we have a few minutes left. Were there any questions the audience had about what might go on? I mean, either in behind the scenes or in general.
Will there be a mobile version of Wireshark?
The question was whether or not there will be a mobile version of Wireshark. The best answer is maybe. There are a couple of, there are two big obstacles there. One is the fact that, if you go to Jasper's presentation, he talks about having as many monitors on his desk and as large monitors on his desk as possible to use Wireshark, just because you have this huge packet list and this huge tree and all these other huge windows that we have. My phone only has one screen and it's very small. And I don't know, if we did port Wireshark to mobile platforms, we're going to have to refactor the user interface quite a bit just to make it usable in any way. That's one obstacle. Fortunately, since moving to the Qt user interface toolkit, Qt actually supports both Android and iOS. So theoretically, we could start a porting effort to get Wireshark running on those platforms using Qt. I don't know if that's going to happen. Laura asks about running Wireshark on our iPad all the time, and I give her a funny look, and then I get confused and walk away. So maybe it'll happen. Maybe, it's just a matter of somebody sitting down and deciding to spend the time on it. It's by no means a trivial effort. So, but hopefully we'll get there.
And if you don't mind taking shortcuts, you can install Wireshark on your mobile phones, given it's an Android and given it's rooted, because you can install a Debian CH root and you can run Wireshark on a mobile phone. And you can attach it to the big screen, and you get the big screen of Bioshock, and you can also attach a mouse, but you need to have an Android phone with rooted capabilities. And so you can do that. There is a blog post about that, but bringing Wireshark properly to integrate that to a mobile operating system, it's hard. It's a long job.
Yeah, there are multiple Yaks, and those Yaks are very large. Any other questions? We're all here. Speak up.
This is the time and the place to ask your Wireshark question.
Yeah.
And you also have to the rest of today and tomorrow.
Okay, so you have no questions. I'm assuming Wireshark works perfectly for every one of you.
Does everybody in the room use Wireshark on a pretty regular basis? I'm assuming that's why you're
Okay.
here. And it all works perfectly for you all the time, and there are no issues with it. I think we can go home then.
Okay. All right. If nobody has any other questions, looks like we're going to wrap up actually a little bit early. I tend to talk very fast in my presentations. I'm sorry about that. Oh, we have a question.
No. You said you learned how to do some Lua scripting here. Maybe there's a lab or something that's been written for it.
Maybe. I heard about that. To actually learn Lua scripting and learn about Lua dissectors, the best place to start with is visiting Graham's presentation about writing dissectors in C in Lua, right?
Yeah, tomorrow morning.
So you're welcome to join, and if you are confident enough to finish a small exercise in Lua, you are welcome to take the papers from the desk. There are Lua labs. I don't know where, but they are somewhere there. Lua.
Right up at the desk with all the other conference labs at Wireshark University desk.
Yeah.
One separate one that has all these Lua labs, including Lua dissector from online, so you can try it. But we'll link out the Lua lab.
Yeah, you will learn about a lot of Wireshark features in the next days. But if a feature is not there, there is a good chance you can implement it in Lua in a few lines of code.
Yes.
I have a question. Just a couple of weeks ago, I tried to write a dissector in Lua, but the problem is I just can't find which functions I can use. For instance, I wanted to do some MD5 hashing. Is it built in? Where is it? I don't know. So I have to look on the internet to find myself an MD5 hashing function. A couple of weeks ago, I was working on a Lua dissector, and I just can't find a list of built-in functions I can use. For instance, I was needing to do some MD5 hashing, but I don't know if it's built in or not. So I have to look on the internet to find myself an implementation in Lua, which I can use for my dissector, but maybe it's already there.
Here, you wanna, here.
Oh, they got it.
Sure. Is it on?
Yes?
Okay.
Okay.
So with Lua, nice thing about this, you can load third-party libraries like C libraries or plain Lua libraries. Wireshark has its own library on top of it, so you can interact with Wireshark. It also has some convenient function, and all of these you can find in the Wireshark developer guide. There are two sections in Lua. First, it gives you an introduction with some examples on how to write a dissector or a listener. And following that, there's a reference manual. And in that reference manual, you can find all functions that are exported by Wireshark to Lua. But yeah, if you need an MD5 library, for example, your best thing to try is finding a C library or a Lua library. Lua libraries tend to be slower, so if you can find some Lua binding to a C library, then that's your best shot.
All right, sounds very good. I'm looking forward to hear more about how I can interface with C libraries.
Okay.
Okay.
And as far as getting help with that sort of thing goes, Lua is kind of a special case because it's this other language that we didn't make and we don't provide primary support for. So you kind of have this other Lua community and the Wireshark community that you kind of have to straddle and work with at the same time. But having said that, there are a couple of places you can go for Wireshark. There's ask.wireshark.org, which is our question and answer site, and there's the Wireshark dev mailing list. And even if it's more Lua specific, we'll try to help out as best we can.
Now that you've moved to Qt, will you also open up the Qt scripting libraries? Because it might be easier for some people, because Lua is a little bit odd at times if you're a C programmer.
Oh, go ahead. Did you want to say anything? Or? Okay. We haven't really talked about that. As far as I know, the Qt scripting is that linked to QML? I can't recall. Oh. Run over here.
So basically with Lua we have a deep backend integration into a dissection engine. With the Qt interface as of the moment it's just a UI. So we can do with QScript, we can do stuff like allow you guys to add another pop-up text or add some help pages or stuff like that. But it will be more difficult to get it to the same extent of level of integration as Lua is right now. That being said, it's not out of the question if you're interested in doing it. Yeah, feel free to join us and start working on it. The same goes for QML. So it's everything that Qt offers is basically not out of the question, not out of the picture. For the moment, we have two major UI interfaces. We have the GTK interface, we have the Qt interface, and I'm especially saying for the moment and looking a little bit in this direction, we're supporting both. So we're not implementing something for the Qt interface which will break the GTK interface.
So this idea haven't came up before, so thank you for that. But there is a big obstacle in implementing these sectors in QML, and this is T-Shark, which is not linked with Qt or GTK either. So if you want to support T-Shark with your dissector, you have a problem. We try to look for a very an interpreted language with a very small footprint, so you can link it to Wireshark, T-Shark, or the GTK or Qt version, so you get the dissectors on every UI we have. Pardon? I couldn't hear the question, sorry.
You mentioned that you are providing a new language for talking to T-Shark, Wireshark, etc. When will this be available? Or you mean Lua right now can do this?
Yeah, Lua right now can do that. What we're talking about with the Qt script is more theoretical. It's a kind of a proposal.
There used to be attempts to provide a Python
Yes.
API, but it failed so far. Or
Yeah, somebody. I feel bad because somebody spent actually quite a bit of time, working on initial support for Python scripting within Wireshark, and I think he either changed jobs or he wasn't able to continue working on it, and it kind of stagnated, and nobody picked up, the effort, and so we ended up having to drop it.
there is also a project called NetExpect, which provides Tickle interface for Wireshark dissection, but it also stopped,
Yeah.
I think.
Anyone else? Okay. All right. Well, great. Well, if no one has any other questions, I know these guys probably get tired of this, but I try to wrap up each of my talks, the same way. And and what I like to say is that Wireshark is a great and wonderful thing, and it's not because of me, it's because of all of you and because of all of these guys. And it's an honor and a privilege to be able to work on something like this, something as wonderful as this. And so thank you. I cannot thank you enough for this privilege.